These are the true stories
of sequestered strangers,
ordered to shelter in place,
work from home,
and have their love lives taped.
Find out what happens
when people stop wearing pants
and start getting real.
This is the real world,
I think.
with love under lockdown.
Hey everyone.
Hey all.
My name is Cara Cutter.
And I'm Farrah D.
And we're longtime friends currently under shelter-in-place orders in the city of San Francisco. During a recent Zoom happy hour, we found ourselves wondering how our single friends were handling virtual dating.
And if any of our wedded friends are ready to kill each other.
And then we got curious to know how others were faring in this unique time of COVID. And just like that, Love Under Lockdown was born.
We have spoken to people all over the U.S. and abroad, including
a woman who describes herself as the hall pass mistress in a marriage on the rocks,
a newly single born-again Christian who is treated to a third date at Costco,
an entrepreneur who found himself missing sex parties, so he took them online,
a recently incarcerated reality TV star nursing a broken heart,
and so many more.
We are excited to share our favorite stories with you, as well as a few tips and party tricks we've picked up along the way, like how to be virtually flirty and keep the phone sex dirty.
All in all, we've been blown away by the spirit of creativity that has prevailed as people have figured out new ways to connect.
So here we go. So today we have a very sexy podcast for everyone. We had the opportunity to speak with Mischa. He is a life coach and sex educator. I love that. And he is a founder of forLove, which was born out of the pandemic, a pandemic baby.
Yes.
Him and his friends were missing sex parties.
They sound like a fun bunch.
I know.
Having sex parties on the reg, and they missed them. Much like I miss hugs, but you know, some people miss sex parties.
Hugs.
And so they took matters into their own hands, literally, and created forLove.
Thank God they did, because we reaped the benefits.
We absolutely did.
Mischa discussed so many amazing tips,
some tricks,
and insights about sexual connection in this different medium.
And how to do phone sex.
Yes. Which I didn't realize. I had no idea how to have phone sex.
It's a fine art. I mean, to be honest, the last time I thought about phone sex was well over a decade ago when I was in a long distance relationship. And
that's all I can think about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a cool skill to have. I don't know if I'd put it on my resume, but
I want it to go on your resume.
I'll put it on my LinkedIn.
Even better. And we don't want to keep you from this a second more. So let's get into it.
Let's go. Giddy up. I don't know about you two, but I'm ready to talk about love and sex today versus the shit show going on.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with you. Let's do a quick little bit of background on you, if you wouldn't mind, and where you are sheltering in place.
Okay. My name is Mischa Byrick. I grew up in Berkeley, California, in the Bay Area. I've lived all over, but I moved back here about 5 years ago from New York, and I live in San Francisco. And I'm moving actually to the Oakland Hills in a couple of weeks. You know, I've been spending a lot of time over the last 3 months, really engaged in how to create intimacy and connection remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
we all need a deep connection, and what are the ways that we can do that without being physically present with each other? I used to think that wasn't even an interesting question, and now I find it incredibly compelling.
Yeah, now it's at the core of our happiness. I feel like our ability to be happy. Well, we would love to hear the conception story of forLove and how the idea was born and how the site came to be.
Yeah, so forLove parties really came to be because a friend of mine just started hosting really impromptu, essentially virtual play parties in a Zoom room the night, like the Friday after quarantine started.
He was on it.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, my friends and I are pretty into sex positivity and parties, and we wanted to see what was possible with the virtual Zoom space. And we were just experimenting, and I started hosting some of the experiences within the room. We quickly figured out that these spaces, not universally, but generally demanded a level of facilitation.
Sure.
From like a kind of general play party where people kind of are more on their own, like a normal party, like a Zoom room requires some level of facilitation. And then we were doing those once a week for the first month or so, and then it became more of an organization. There's a whole team now that are working together on managing volunteers and managing experience hosts. And for safety, we've created a whole membership model so that, we're not bringing strangers onto the room, which could be really just dangerous and not contribute to the sense of safety that's required. So like many play party organizations and sex positive organizations, we're a membership organization, and you have to apply to be a member before you can come to any event now. You could throw a bunch of people in the Zoom room and be like, let's get sexy, but no one will.
No one will.
That ball rolling, really?
I mean, like, because there's you get all sorts of issues of gender ratio, of perceived safety, of like, am I being recorded? Like, what's there to prevent someone from recording me? Like, who in fact is watching? Like, what if someone has their screen blacked out? What if someone has a mask on? So much can affect your sense of safety. Not to mention it's new for almost everybody. Like,
right. I was about to say, like, I wouldn't know how to get sexy. And I think that's like an issue for a lot of people right now who are even dating. They're used to feeling somebody out in person and all the connecting with them. And now a lot of people who are dating are like, I don't even know how to have phone sex. I don't even know. Yeah. So how do you even guide them and teach them?
Well, it does. I mean, I think you're really pointing to something really important, which is that it involves a whole nother layer of vulnerability, which is that we're all sharing in this kind of like ignorance, right? In the sense of like, this is new and different and uncomfortable for everybody. One of the big distinctions I make is when we're engaged in a video call, like there's both sound and visuals.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how our parties are. But a lot of what I encourage people to start with remote connection is just sound. It's just a phone call. And starting with basically getting on the phone with someone that you feel comfortable with, and just breathing with them. So moving from a space of heady conversation via technology to presence via technology. That's like step one.
Beautiful.
So we just be like really deeply in our own bodies, sharing that experience together. And so that might mean like I might get on the phone with my best friend and just guide like what hugging him would feel like, and almost like a virtual hug, where I describe it, and then we're both breathing together, and we find ourselves more in our bodies, and that kind of opens the door. And then there's a kind of continuum of sensuality where you could describe a massage, or you can describe eye gazing, and then you can actually, and of course you can eroticize it quite dramatically through like actually doing phone sex and describing an erotic encounter, or self-pleasuring while you're on the phone with a partner and describing it, or just being very vocal and expressive with, right? The kind of three keys are and the sensual exhale, like and then there's moaning as well, right? And all of these take on like a huge importance.
This is like blowing my mind, because it's funny how, what if somebody is just like really good at this like auditory sexual experience, and then you meet them in person and they're just like really smelly, or like it just throws the whole thing off.
The whole thing is blown. That's it. No.
And I think if I may, Farrah, what I'm kind of seeing in your question is there's this hierarchy that I think all of us kind of default have in our minds, which is that this logically intermediated stuff is the stopgap. It's temporary. It's not like the real thing.
And you're saying,
when I actually meet the person, that's when the real connection happens. And I would just invite us to question that. That there are some dynamics that actually might be perfect for this person. Gives really great phone sex. I'm actually not that physically attracted to them and don't really want to spend time with them like in real life, but that's fine because we have this beautiful phone connection and that's real and sacred and its own thing.
Sure.
You know what? I can get on board with that. Actually, that makes sense to me.
In fact, it could be liberating even. Normally the visual would be the block.
Right. That's a good point too. Yeah.
Or just, like relegating a friendship to someone that I party with versus someone I'm going to, dump on when I'm really struggling, just different buckets for different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So what tips, if you have, like, let's say I have never done this before and I want to be just like the best phone sexer ever. I want to learn. I mean, it sounds like a great skill to have.
It's such a great skill to have.
Right?
I was teaching the first 2 months of quarantine. I was teaching workshops every week, like phone sex and then advanced phone sex, right? I think it's a huge skill to have. So one of the tips I recommend is actually like in your own self-pleasuring practice, like being vocal. So it's very important in a phone sex connection to have a sense of what I call authentic performance, to be true and authentic in your body, but also be communicating your own pleasure or your own turn on to your partner. And that creates a really beautiful dynamic. This applies to all genders, by the way, right?
Yeah, sure.
People have a story that it's only, right? And this is pornography too, right? Only women are allowed to moan and men are sometimes allowed to grunt.
Right.
So weird, right?
Yeah.
But like the moaning is really important, right? Especially like there's someone talking and using words, and then the other person should be encouraging, affirming, and validating that person's words to let them know that they're on board, that they're on the same page. And that could be done with moans. It could be like, yes, more of that. Mm-hmm. So to get good at phone sex, I'd say basically have phone sex with yourself, right? Where you're actually moaning and making sounds and ums.
My neighbors already think I'm so weird.
I know. There is a neighbor dynamic of that.
You know what's also interesting that you just made me think of? I think women are also really good at faking it. So I like how you're saying authentic. Like, haven't you been with a guy before, Cara, or anyone? Haven't you been with somebody and you can tell that the women he's been with before were just faking it? Because I think we have been taught that our auditory experience is to be performers.
When I use the word performance, I think phone sex actually brings this up. I'm so glad that you mentioned it. It's such an important thing to confront when it comes to like, especially heterosexual dynamics and like the pressure on women to perform their pleasure, right? If there's a pressure on women to perform sexually through their erections, there's a pressure on women to perform their pleasure for their men, right? And this could be really problematic in a phone sex context, or it could actually be really liberating. A lot of the people who come to my phone sex classes have that same question. They're heterosexual women and they have that same question. What I would say is the beauty of phone sex is that you don't need to worry about them touching you in a way that actually isn't pleasurable.
Sure.
Yeah.
You could be touching yourself in a way that's really pleasurable. Right? Yeah. And then you can be, there's this narrowing of focus where I invite people to invite their partners to use their voice in a way that sounds pleasurable. And the best way to do that is just to breathe into your belly and go low and slow. So if I was to have, I'm kind of up in my register here and talking, we're just talking, we're in our heads. But for phone sex, I would be much lower and much slower.
Interesting.
And that alone, it doesn't even matter if I'm talking about sex and cocks and pussies. I could just be talking about baba ganoush, armchairs, and picture frames. And so long as my voice is really present, and so long as you and I are sharing the vulnerability of being in our bodies together, which is a big ask, especially if you can't visually confirm that the person isn't just looking at the phone and laughing at you.
Right.
Then what I've found is that again and again, people are able to enter into that space because both of them want to. They both want to enter into that vulnerability.
How can you get let's say you're taking the class, your partner isn't. Is there ways or techniques for people to get their partners to feel more comfortable?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would suggest is teaching your partner just the sensual exhale, which is kind of like one of my go-to tools, right? And it actually really does help. The sensually exhaling helps you get into your body and into your turn on more. So if you've ever had a hard time getting turned on, Do that 10 times and together with your partner, and the sounds of each other will like help turn you both on.
Interesting.
Then I would suggest, if you get into like, I'm just describing what's happening or describing your fantasy scenario, start really slow as well, not just slowing your words, but slowing the action. You can get very erotic very easily with essentially PG-13 rated activities. Does that make sense, right? So
yeah.
not putting the pressure on them to like describe some like fuck fest, but rather really just being like
like foreplay,
or even like nature scenes, like describe the scene that we're in, describe the like we're in that mountain path that we know that we love hiking in together, and we can feel the leaves crunching under our feet. And we're holding hands, and I'm looking deep into your eyes, and the wind is whipping your hair, and that kind of thing. And then you're both together. You want to start co-creating a fantasy slowly, like talk about instead. The other thing I would say, don't you say let's have phone sex. That could be very intimidating for someone who's not. Say let's just share some sensual energy over the phone, or even share erotic energy over the phone. I like that phrasing, even though it's a little woo-woo, like a little hippie, because it takes the pressure off of like, oh, phone sex. Does that mean we're supposed to like
totally
mimic intercourse? Like, does that mean I have to be touching myself? Like, what are the rules?
Yeah. What does that even mean? Yeah. Well, I think that's a mistake a lot of people are making. I was talking to a friend the other day who had been propositioned for phone sex by a guy she's dating, and they, were sheltering in different places, and basically before the lockdown had never had sex. So it seemed like the next logical step, but I feel like they're skipping everything you're talking about, potentially starting with no visual, maybe just audio, and, setting a sexy scene versus just like, ripping the clothes off and staring at each other, which I think would be horrible.
Oh God, we're all so default to like, we have the capacity with video to like go there automatically. And I would just highly recommend that partners start with just audio.
That makes total sense.
There's a lot of wonderful reasons that you could do just audio, by the way, besides the fact that visuals can like put a lot of pressure on you to get naked right away. And then like first of all, if you're on a one-on-one FaceTime on your phone, what are you looking at? You're looking at them, but you're spending half the time looking at yourself. You're adjusting your hair. I'm doing it right. So it puts you in your head automatically. A video call puts you in your head. You're like, how do I look to them? Do I look my best? Oh, it's like, fishbowling. My nose is too big. Oh, my God, the angle is wrong. Phone sex, you can forget all of that. In general, with any kind of visual technology intermediation, you have to orient yourself to the screen and to the camera. You have to look at something, and you have to be in front of something. With phone sex, you don't. With phone sex, you can have the cell phone right on the bed next to you, on speaker, and you could be completely hands-free. You could touch yourself. You could go like this. You could be closing your eyes. You can do what you need to do to get into your own body, and not be orienting yourself to that screen, into that camera. And that can be really liberating. And then finally, I'd say like phone sex allows you to go into co-creating fantasy where a visual medium really doesn't. Like a visual medium, it's like there is no mountain path. There's no wind.
You're rooted in the reality.
I can't imagine that because you're right there. I'm looking at you. And that can be wonderful, especially for people who love to, exhibit their own bodies. Like I'm an exhibitionist. I love that being watched thing. That's not for everybody, and so I would invite people to just turn the screens off, get on the phone, and share some sensuality before getting sexy.
Yeah. Well, when you're ready to get on the video and you're not an exhibitionist personality, what tips do you have for people to come out of their shell and to drop into their bodies and go there?
Well, one of the biggest ones, and I think this is kind of a truism for sex and sexuality in general, is that I think the video medium for sexuality really demands verbal affirmation. And it demands us to know what kinds of verbal affirmation, and this applies to people of all genders, really turn us on, right? If your lover has like a really small cock, don't tell them they have a gigantic cock, but tell them that their cock turns you on. Right?
So don't lie. Yeah.
Don't lie, but also say like it, right? If you know that your lover is like sensitive about their love handles or about that, right? Like say, oh, your sides look so lovely. You know, your ass is so sexy. You know, like lots of affirmations. Like that's one of the best things that's being demanded of us from this medium, is using our words to like make our partners feel good. And you could do that with like, you know, seductive descriptions of phone sex, or you can just say nice things to them. Can we just all say more nice things to each other?
Yes. I love compliments.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? You know, like, you're turning me on so much, like validating them, affirming them.
And in this void of, you know, you're around the same couple of people or the same person all day, every day, or you're alone, I can't imagine anything nicer than a flood of affirmations.
Yeah, just like let it rain, make it rain.
Make it rain affirmations.
Make it rain affirmations. And that's what I encourage in a lot of our erotic rooms at forLove is that we make it rain affirmations on each other. So if we're in a room collectively of like 10 or 20 people, then the chat is filled with like, oh, you're so beautiful. You're, you know, polite. Right? We don't want to objectify, and there's a fine line. But in general, if someone's on the screen and they're in lingerie and they're dancing, then the worst thing is to have a bunch of people just staring. And the best thing is to have people going, oh, yes, thank you. Thank you for showing us your body. Oh, you're turning me on so much. Like putting in the chat, like lots of emojis of like clapping or hearts or like you know, like explosions. Like all that stuff just feels good to see, you know? Like I've had these moments where I'm dancing in front of a camera. This is like a dance party, but like if I get spotlighted at a dance party, a DJ or host at a dance party, and then like the comments thread just like blows up with people affirming my dancing, then I want to dance more, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Naturally.
I would love to hear, you know, what you can share about a party, how the moderation works. Do you have theme night?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this medium for allowing us to go deep into themes. We've done parties where there aren't that many themes. Like when we were first getting started, it was mostly just our friends. We didn't have to put a lot of controls in place because we knew everybody personally who was at the party, and we trusted them.
Sure.
And the rooms would be like, generally we're talking about multiple rooms all linked to, you know, now we create a really sexy website just for the party, just for that one night. And it's like a web, you know, and then each image tells you what kind of room it's going to be, what kind of experience to expect. And you can click through and that loads up the Zoom room. But we've also just had like pretty simple parties where it's like one Zoom room is like the talking area. We call it like the smoking lounge, and you can just talk. And sometimes there's facilitated activities, sometimes like truth or dare or never have I ever, or just some prompts. We've done breakouts to like, you know, kind of have the function of icebreakers. So we use the breakout feature and let people connect. You know, we've done webinars or rooms that are just demos, or someone will like demonstrate like a shibari on their partner, like Japanese.
What's that?
Shibari is Japanese rope bondage. It's like all those sexy knots and stuff, or other kinky stuff. Or we do like we've had rooms that are collective strip teases, right? Where one person will say, "Okay, I'm the host. Now your job, everybody's job in this room is to turn me on," right? And so they'll put on music, you know, and everybody, and they'll maybe give it invocations. Okay, everybody, like, you know, let's get as sexy as you can just with your shoulder, you know, and you'll get everybody kind of like doing like this or something, you know, it can be a little silly. Or like, okay, everybody, like, be as sexy as you can, but let me show me like your face. Like, let's just show off your face. Or everybody go to your closet and grab a mask, because we all have masks. Okay, like get sexy with your mask now, you know what I mean? Like, so there's direction, you know, and facilitation. There's some rooms where like I run a room where I just lower my voice and we take turns talking dirty to each other. We talk dirty performatively to each other based on people's willingness to participate. So someone will say, oh yeah, like I'd love to do that with you. And then we'll kind of have performative visual phone sex, right? So I might say, you know, I'm running my hand along your cheek, and then the person on the screen will run their own hand along their cheek on the video. This is very hot. Like, you know, I know I'm describing it in kind of like a nerdy way, but like it gets very, very hot and very sexy to see these kinds of synchronicities between what's happening. If you're watching this, it's like Mischa's voice, this person's visual are aligned and synced. That could be really hot. There's people who like basically start chatting in these sex rooms and then like are flirting with each other, and then maybe go out the sex room and just get on their own FaceTime. Or within the party, they'll just pin each other's screens. right? And then they're actually experiencing something a lot more intimate, even in the context of the larger virtual space, right? There might be 20 other people, but we know that we have each other's screens pinned.
So I have a question. It's probably because I'm just an insecure person, but what if you're in one of these chat rooms and you're really into somebody and you're like, I want to have a one-on-one conversation with them, or I want to pin with them, and then they pin somebody else? Would you feel rejected? Like, couldn't you?
Yeah. I mean,
does that happen?
Yeah, because you can have lots of one-on-one chats going on at the same time. There's plenty of people who are kind of like flirting with multiple people all at once within the same kind of sexy space, right? And so there can be that. I mean, there's definitely, just like any social space, there's risk of rejection.
Yeah, good point. Such as life.
What I would say is that we've taken lots of steps to like facilitate a culture in which like we're both welcoming people's authentic yes and their authentic no, which is really important for, right? Like, the culture of forLove is not just like, only come here if you're ready to get down and dirty and do whatever. It's the opposite. It's like, please come here and explore your no. Like we welcome your no. We roll out the red carpet, in fact, for your no. There's ways to watch that are really transactional and extractive, and then there's ways to watch that are more participatory. So the basic bottom line requirement that we require for everybody to come to our parties is, first of all, to be a member, which requires us asking you a bunch of questions. Then there's privacy stuff. You have to kind of sign a thing that says you're over 18, says that you're not going to record anything ever, right?
That's great. Yeah.
Right. Then you also have to have your video on, and you can't look like you're about to come to a business meeting. Like, so this look where I'm coming late and I'm at my desk, clearly, right? Not it, right?
Okay.
You have to shift up something so that it doesn't look, so that you're putting some effort into what's coming through on your video. Right?
So you don't mean, like, I can show up in a suit if that's my thing. If I think suits are sexy, but not at my desk.
Yeah, just the lighting, put the camera on your bed or even in your living room. Like take the time to do something other than what your normal Zoom is.
Sure.
It's such a buzzkill to have someone just at their desk being like, yeah. Not to mention, by the way, like if a dude, and it's usually, right, like if someone wants to be entertained by something sexy on the internet, there are 18 billion ways for that to happen. You know what I mean? Like we are all about participation. Like if you want to like go on and see people camming for you, there's Chatterbait, there's a gazillion free porn sites. Like,
this is not the place.
This is like, you're here with us. We're all in a party together and we're all sharing vulnerability. So video on, dress up your video feed. But after that, and no masks, because masks remove shared vulnerability. You can change your screen name to be a Zoom alias. And we, as a host organizer, will know who you are because we match your Zoom alias to your actual name, but the rest of the attendees won't necessarily. So if you want to stay anonymous from them. That said, if someone snaps a picture of you at one of these parties and that means that you're going to be estranged from your family or lose your job, we do not recommend that you come. Because, honestly, we can't prevent.
We can't control everything that happens.
It's the internet. We'd be crazy to guarantee people's privacy or anonymity in this kind of context.
You do your best. Yeah.
In this day and age where there are a lot of people who have triggers, could I come to you and say, like, if somebody mentions this word or this scenario, I'm going to be triggered, and can you create like a safe space for me in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Our host facilitators, what we do is we kind of do the consent and as much in advance as possible. So we have a couple of mechanisms for that. The first is we create a variety of experiences now. So our parties now have like sensual type experiences, like almost like tracks at a conference, right? You can go into the sensual track and have like embodiment or guided, like let's just do some breathing that brings us into our bodies and makes us feel good. We're just some guided self-massage, stuff like that. Or we have something like kinky for people who are really kinky, or we have like explicitly sexual. And then we kind of have like fun or weird rooms where we have like art performances or puppets or games, right? So those are kind of like the kind of types of experience. Then before you enter into any room, like in a room, like the experience in that room is going to be described for you ahead of time. So you know what you're getting into. This is the kind of environment that you're getting into. Now that won't necessarily take into account every single possible word, but you'll get a sense of it. And then the third thing is that we use a system indicating consent in your Zoom alias, in your name. So if you've got G in front of your name, like I do, it means I'm down for whatever. I take ownership of saying no, right? You can flirt with me. You can, try to turn me on. You can chat with me. You can approach me, right? And if you're a host, you can spotlight me, right? And I will take responsibility for saying no. If it's yellow or a Y in front of your name, it's ask me permission before doing anything sexual with me. Before the host calls on me or says, hey, let's spotlight your video, Mischa, or someone privately chats me some sexy stuff. Oh my God, your boobs look so hot. No, it's just ask permission. Hi, may I,
that's nice. Yeah.
Would you, right? So that's safety, right? And if someone doesn't respect that, that's a consent violation. And then we have safety volunteers in every room that you can report to that aren't the hosts, that are separate people. We also have a room that you can go to for emotional support, because these spaces can be so, like you said, very triggering. We literally have a dedicated Zoom room just for emotional support.
That's great.
Wow.
Yes.
Are you also accounting for my sexual preferences, if I'm straight or gay or open right out the gate, or you're not necessarily classifying people in that way?
Yeah, we try not to classify people. What we've found is that any number of types of experiences could be turn-ons, and the sheer variety of human sexuality and the fluidity is just amazing, And we're not trying to create something just that appeals to the lowest common denominator. If we were, we would just create a strip club.
Sure.
That's not what we're interested in at all. What we've found is that it could be a deep turn on for a group of queer women to see straight men dancing, because it could just be very, very sexy. Or for straight men, we've seen that sometimes it's actually not about the visual element of female bodies so much as the sound, is the voices and the sound. We've done some really beautiful things of collectively creating everybody moaning together can be super hot, right? It could be you're creating a soundscape of sex. And it's even if nobody's actually having sex, we're all just sounding moans and sensual exhales, and everybody's turned on. And what's great is that in a space where it's 20 different people and different races and ages and body types and orientations, you can't even tell what orientation someone is just from their video feed. So it's a straight man could be in a room filled with other straight men as well as women, and a queer man can be turned on by the men, and the straight men can be turned on by the women, and the women can be turned on by each other or whoever. And that's actually kind of wonderful, is that we're all kind of willing to be seen. Then there's a whole kind of other area of these are spaces to explore specific kinks or specific turn-ons, exhibitionism and voyeurism and erotic talk that a lot of people just skip over when you've got access to physical, right? A lot of us just because why bother? We can always just be physical with each other. I actually love that these spaces are giving us occasion to practice and get better at being in our own bodies without needing someone else to help put us in our bodies, being with our own pleasure, using our words, using our sounds, getting creative with how we present, and even putting on a show, even if we're not naturally exhibitionists.
And I feel from that perspective, incorporating more sensory experience into physical sex would only make it better, right? So, learning how to be more auditory and then bringing that into a physical situation seems additive to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll also say that with phone sex, you can have experiences that you might not actually ever want. You can explore taboos or things that you might not want physically. I've worked with partners and people for whom they really want to explore a rape fantasy, or they want to explore racial play. That's just completely off the table in physical reality.
Right.
For them. But phone sex allows it to still be in your own integrity, to explore these things, kind of erotica.
Absolutely. Yeah. That makes total sense. Have you come out of this experience of both being in quarantine and starting this new venture with any takeaways that you're excited to bring forward into a more normal sort of existence?
I think, if anything, this experience is giving all of us, and I want to invite everybody listening to feel into the deeper appreciation we have for each other's bodies and the respect that I hope that this experience gives us for each other's bodies. That like, you know, we're learning to treat each other quite sacredly, right? Because it's such a big deal now to be in physical contact. Like, I'd actually like to invite us to treat each other's bodies with even more reverence.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love that too. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and giving us kind of a peek into forLove. And
Sure. Thank you.
Really
And teaching us a lot.
I know. I have to like send my husband away.
Yeah, well, it's such a pleasure and an honor being here with you both. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So a huge thank you to you, the listener, of course, and Mischa for sharing those amazing tips with us. We loved it. And you are now a sexier person for listening.
You're welcome.
You're welcome and congratulations.
Big thanks to Mischa. Can't wait to circle back with him and see how forLove is doing. If any of you join and attend a party, reach out to us. We would love to hear about your experience.
If they let you in.
Yeah. Slide into our DMs and let us know how the party goes.
And to slide into the DMs, we are on Instagram at lul.pod. The DDD.
I'm going to cut this here and before this gets dirty. Thanks, y'all. See you next time.
Yeah, man, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to spend money on clothes again. I wonder what that feeling will be like.
I'm definitely spending money on sweats and tie-dye.
Yeah, like dirt cheap stuff for me. Like, I got my stimulus check. I was so excited about it.
Nice.
I was so excited about it.
Good.
It's literally on my nightstand. I was like, yeah, this is next to this.
Your stimulus check is sitting next to you right now.
Yeah, exactly.
You can just look over at it whenever you want and pet it. In a normal scenario, we would just like go to a rooftop and like try to have a glass of wine and decompress. And we can't do any of that. Like, we were socially distant in front of a coffee shop. Like, oh my gosh, that's funny. I'm like, what the hell was that? Our neighbors literally just did a gender reveal that I just saw. I have to like take a photo. So fucking random. No. They're all in front of their pool and I heard this like pop and I'm like, oh my God, I thought it was like a gunshot. I look out and there's like confetti coming out of a thing and the parents are going, ah!
Are they insane, by the way?
They're like fucking insane.
Out of their fucking mind. Do they know what just happened with the wildfires?
The fires? I can't believe I just like
funny, Cara. I can't
live witnessed a gender reveal.
Oh my gosh.
By the way, it's a boy.
Whoa.
This is too much. Like, people
Do they not watch the news? Do they not know what's like?
By the way, like,
The audacity.
we need our space. Like, our neighbors being all up in each other's business because we're all home all the goddamn time. It's too much. It's too much.